Okay, afternoon everyone. Welcome back. Okay, I hope everyone enjoyed their lunch and the breakout sessions upstairs. I think there was a good bit to be had at the breakout sessions. I also noticed Zurich took the initiative of bringing a couple of guys in to review a number of brokers' websites. So I'd like to congratulate them on that. Look, this afternoon we'll be digging into some of our favourite topics, brokers versus banks we'll start with. We've Emma Harte here from Customer Perceptions. Emma basically was involved in a mystery shopping exercise which was looking at the customer experience of dealing with brokers and dealing with banks. And that was done during November and December of last year. So Emma's going to come up and give us a bit of a talk based around that. After that, we'll have a very, very short break where you can literally run out the door, grab a cup of coffee and run back in again. And then we'll have our keynote speaker who is Brian Cody, who needs little or no introduction. So I'll pass you over to Emma. Thank you very much.
So good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for having me here. This morning when I was getting ready to prepare for this afternoon, I mentioned to my husband that I was coming to Crow Park, and I knew his ears would prick because as a Banagher man from County Offaly, who lives and breathes hurling, his whole family do, his only words of encouragement to me heading off this morning was, whatever you do, don't keep Brian Cody waiting. So I'll get stuck in, and I promise I'll keep very much to the time. I'm also here joined today by my colleague Ronan Cassidy, who would have been the account manager for the mystery shopping. So maybe afterwards, or even after the event, or even over the coming days, certainly if you have any questions, you don't hesitate to contact us. So some of you may be aware of us, but for those of you who aren't, just to tell you a couple of headlines about us. We specialise in mystery shopping, customer satisfaction, training and consultancy. This is actually our 21st year in business. We're based in Dundalk and we have a team of around 12, and then key to our business is actually our field force. We have about 5,500 mystery shoppers throughout Ireland, Northern Ireland and ROI. But we recruit our shoppers all year round to keep new opinions and new shopper opinions coming onto our base. Our key sectors that we work in would be hospitality, a lot in the financial sector, telecommunications, retail and FMCG. And to date we've conducted over 280,000 mystery shopping assessments, and over a quarter of these are actually within the financial sector. So we have a lot of experience and insights from our customers and our mystery shopping to bring to the table. This just highlights some of the clients that we work with at the moment, but the common factor between them all is that pretty much everything we do is about measuring the customer experience. And as I mentioned, we do this using mystery shopping, where we can walk into a premises and assess it, the telephone, the web or video. We also do customer satisfaction, we do face-to-face interviews, telephone interviews, exit polls and focus groups as well. And we use these methodologies to identify areas within the businesses that are doing well and areas that need to be addressed in order to make the whole experience a better one from the customer's perspective. And for those of you who may have heard of mystery shopping, and sometimes there's a bit of confusion, what's the difference between mystery shopping and customer satisfaction? Well, what sets mystery shopping apart is that mystery shopping, it not only takes into account the customer satisfaction, but it also measures companies or organizational standards. So to give you an example, for instance, even though if you were asking a customer after they've put down the phone or finished a meeting, you know, how did you find that experience? The fact that the staff member may have not been wearing a name badge, or if it's in a supermarket, it took them 4 or 5 minutes to find a staff member, they may not very well come to the front of the customer's mind, but in fact they're very important to a company or an organization in terms of standards and how the business is viewed. So mystery shopping also gives customers, the mystery shoppers, an opportunity to be proactive. So we always ask our mystery shoppers, what could they do to improve this? If you own this business or you were the manager, what advice would you give to them? How could you improve the service here? So it's proactive rather than being reactive to a list of questions. So getting down to what we did for PIBA, as was mentioned, we conducted this research the last quarter of last year, and we conducted 30 mystery shops in total, 15 to the financial brokers and 15 mystery shops to the banks. Now, the number, I'm sure you'll agree, is quite small as a sample, but the results that we'll go through actually hold fairly steady with the results that we do within the financial sector. And we simply asked the mystery shopper to go in with a scenario that they were self-employed, that they had an SME business, and they're calling to inquire about pension options. The shoppers we selected from our base were experienced shoppers who met the profile for this scenario, and there's a good mix between male and female, and the average age is about from late 20s to around early 50s. And the objective of this exercise was to assess the level of service, measure the customer experience, and where we could compare the financial insurance experience versus the banks. So what did we ask them to measure? It really was just to measure the natural flow of the customer journey using that scenario. The mystery shopper called and made an appointment, they set up the appointment, then they turn up for the appointment, and then we looked at how they were greeted, how they were brought into the office, for instance, and then where the consultation or the meeting took place. And we broke this down into 4 variables. So you have the initial introduction, that's where the context of the meeting is going to be laid out. Then exploring the needs, so where the staff member got a sense of the customer's needs by asking relevant questions. Matching the needs, so after listening to the customer's answers, actually coming up with suitable products and options. And finally, the most important part of any business, actually asking for the business or moving forward with the application. We used this customer journey and devised a template and a brief where the mystery shopper would record the results, and that's what we're going to look at right now. So who did better? Well, thankfully I can say that the financial brokers did better than the banks by 3%. So you'll see the financial brokers achieved 78%, whereas the banks achieved 75%. But to put this in context, and from our experience within the financial sector, and to be honest, most sectors we'd operate, hospitality, retail, the average standard for excellent customer service tends to lie at around the 85%. So there's a lot of room for improvement here, and we'll cover these points as we go on. But that's not to say there weren't star performers in the mix here. In fact, there were, of the 15, 6 of the brokers achieved 85% or more, whilst there was only 3 of the banks achieved this. Just looking a little bit further, I hope you can see the chart there. But breaking down the performance, the green indicates where the financial brokers have performed better than the banks, and the red indicates where the banks have done better. The highest score, which is the 3rd row down, was the highest score achieved was 93% for the arrival and greeting, and this was achieved by the financial brokers. And the main advantage here is that there's a much more personal approach, obviously, than what a customer would receive in a bank. So this was a key area of advantage here. The 2 areas where the banks have outperformed the financial brokers were on the introduction and the matching the needs, and I'll go into that a little bit later. And then the poorest performing section in both cases, but the financial brokers doing slightly better, is closing the sale. And to be honest, I'm not surprised with that result, because we see that again in a lot of different sectors. Actually, closing the sale can often be the hardest one. So what I'm going to do now is just run through the customer journey in each of those areas, tell you a little bit about what we measured, and we can hear from some of the mystery shoppers as well. So firstly, looking at the telephone call, what we asked the shoppers to measure, we asked them to look at the ease of getting through making the appointment. Was there a professional greeting? Was it clear? Information gathering, getting the name, contact details, setting a context, so briefly how long it was going to take, what was going to be covered, informing and preparing the customer, so what should they bring along to make the meeting worthwhile, and then finally ensuring that the customer didn't forget. So before the appointment, either texting them or following up the day beforehand to make sure they hadn't forgotten. And although I know these may sound very, very basic, they really do play a very important part in making life that bit easier for the customer and portraying your business as a very knowledgeable and experienced organisation. So in the next slide, what we're going to look at, I wanted to bring a bit of a more human dimension rather than me standing up here and listing off lots of statistics to you. So we've asked a couple of our mystery shoppers who were part of this project. We videoed one of them, and there's recordings of the other two. Something just to bear in mind is that in the mystery shopper refers to the PIBA members, that's obviously yourselves, the financial brokers, and when they refer to the financial institution, they're referring to the banks. So we very simply just asked them who they felt handled the call better and what they could have done to make it better.
I think the financial institution was a better call. The call was more structured. I knew who I was going to be speaking to. The call back to confirm the appointment. I was actually speaking to the financial advisor. He told me what to bring in the next day, roughly how long the meeting was going to take. The PIBA member it didn't come across as structured. I asked for an appointment that day, and the staff member wasn't able to give me an appointment. Said that the financial advisor wasn't in the office, and she wasn't sure if he'd be available for the meeting. I did get a call back then to change the time of the meeting for later on that afternoon. They did, however, mention the location of the branch. They told me exactly where to go for their office. This wasn't managed by the financial institution.
I would say that the PIBA member handled that better because I got through to an actual person straight away, which is a help. With the fact I got through to an automated service, actually I didn't get through the first time that I attempted to make contact. I rang back, got the automated service in the main bank office, and they transferred me to the branch, and I didn't get to talk to anyone, so I left a voicemail. The staff member was out of the office, and I had to wait for him to ring back. He missed me, and then I had to ring him back, so it was a little bit complicated. Neither of them provided any information as to the duration of the meeting or any specifics or details that I needed to bring. They just simply arranged the meeting and told me the time and the date to show up.
I rang the PIBA member and I got through to a voicemail and left a message. He called me back fairly quickly and we set the meeting. Unfortunately, this meeting had to be postponed because he had a family issue, but he was very quick to rearrange his diary so he could fit me in at a time and date that suited me and fitted in with my timescales. With regards to the bank, that was a little more difficult because the number was a call centre. So when I got through to the call centre to try and arrange the meeting, he organised the meeting, which was great. Then he had to call me back because the pension advisor didn't work that particular day, so we arranged for the following day. There was a mix-up then, and it was arranged for the following week. And then, unfortunately, the pension advisor forgot to put it in his diary. So when I texted him that morning just to confirm, he was quite blank and, oh God, what are we going to do? I managed to squeeze me in for a 45-minute meeting. So there was kind of two very different situations, but both were a little bit messy to start with.
Okay, so there are just some of the thoughts and opinions from three of the shoppers. This slide is just indicating some of the key headlines from all of the visits conducted. So firstly, the financial brokers, 80% of the time we were able to get through on the first attempt versus only 53% to the banks. So the financial brokers obviously have a clear advantage here. I mean, I'm sure we've all experienced it's virtually impossible to call and get through to the direct person you're looking for in a bank. More often than not, it's through a call centre, and even at that, you probably still have to go through maybe one or two other people before you actually get to the person you need to speak to. So again, an advantage here. Interestingly, for the ones that did get through to the financial brokers on the first time, all the calls were answered within 1 minute or less. So on average, that's kind of around 5 to 8 rings, while less than half of the banks answered within this time frame. And again, from the thousands and thousands of mystery shops that we do, we'd say that in order to deliver excellent customer service, you really, as an organisation, you should be aiming to answer the phone within 3 rings. It typically tends to be best practice. 79% did not establish if the caller was an existing customer. So again, an important part of that first call, setting the context, whether this is an existing customer or whether it's not. 93% weren't told how long it would take or what documents to bring along. So again, I suppose looking at this very much as the start of the sales process, informing the customer what to bring along is obviously going to make that meeting much more worthwhile if they're coming along with the documents they need to bring. And finally, 20% did not check if the customer knew where the office was. Again, it's a small, a small percentage, but often can be very frustrating if you're the customer trying to find out where you need to go when you could have been informed on the phone. So some of the recommendations that we'd like to share with you here. Again, I realise it may sound very basic, but I suppose every day we're so busy doing the everyday job that we can lose sight of these small little things which really do go a long way to improving the level of service you deliver and how your business is perceived. So firstly, as I said, the initial call is the start of the sales process. It's not when they walk in the door, it's when you pick up the phone. And the first impression is so, so important. So simply ensure that you have a professional greeting. You give the name of your business. You find out if the customer is already a customer. And obviously you're going to treat the call differently if they're already a customer. And the last point being, inform the customer of what's going to happen, what they should bring along. And it could be the difference between the customer going ahead with you when you meet or deciding to shop around or postponing the decision. So moving on to the second part of the customer journey, the arrival and greeting. So now the mystery shoppers actually turned up for the appointment. What we asked them to measure was, did they know where to go? Was it easy to locate? Did they get a warm and friendly greeting on arrival? Did the shopper get the impression that the staff member was actually expecting them? And was it confirmed to them who they'd be meeting, or did the staff member introduce themselves? So similarly, we'll have a listen to our 3 mystery shoppers, and we simply asked them here who they felt had handled the greeting better and why.
Definitely PIB member. When I arrived there, I was greeted straight away, and the staff member apologised for the early mix-up with the financial institution. It was very chaotic, the branch was very busy, there was no clear place where to go, where to see somebody, and who to talk to. I had to look into an office that happened to be open, and the staff member went off to get the financial advisor for me. And they left me waiting. The waiting area was very cramped, it was very narrow, and it didn't seem to be a proper waiting area at all. When I arrived in the office with the PIB member, they seemed surprised to see me. She said that I was lucky that the financial advisor was in. I thought this was strange. It was I was right on time for the appointment, and yet she wasn't sure if he was available to see me.
The bank was kind of a negative experience because when I went into the bank, I had an arrangement made and my meeting had been for 1:30, and he'd asked me to come in a bit early if I could. By the time we reached him, it was 1:30. I couldn't find customer service, nobody came out, and then eventually did meet a staff member. She was very abrupt, didn't shake hands or introduce herself, and I just told her I had a previous meeting arranged. Whereas in the other case with the people member, the staff member behind the desk was on the phone, but she immediately looked up, she smiled and let me know that she had seen me. She stayed on the phone, which I think was the right thing to do, as she was speaking to someone. A couple of seconds passed and she very politely asked the person on the line to hold for a second, and she gave me a smile and said, "I'll have someone with you in a moment." Momentarily, a lady came out, very friendly, didn't give her name, but she did shake hands and ask me who I was there to meet. experience altogether.
It's difficult to quantify, as they're two very different entities here. With the people member, he was working from home, so he welcomed me at his front door, brought me into his living room, he had a nice comfy couch, got me a cup of coffee, and we had a bit of a chit-chat before the meeting started. With regards to the bank, it was much more structured environment. So I walked into the branch. Customer service was busy, very, very busy at the time. So I stuck my head into one of the offices and asked the lady there if she could help me find the gentleman who I was meeting with. And she came to my assistance straight away and went down to his office and brought him back up to me.
So positively, all tends to be more on the side of the financial broker approach, but some mixed views there. Generally, the performance is quite good in both sections for the financial brokers and the banks. However, there were two areas that stood out here. Was firstly that it was very low for both parties in the people that actually introduced themselves. It really should be just a natural part of the conversation. And again, we come across it time and time again in the financial sector, where you're very likely going to be spending a bit of time with this customer, usually over half an hour anyway. And it should be just a natural part of the conversation that if the customer gives you their name, you give your name to them. And secondly, in terms of the greeting, the main finding here was that it was much easier to arrive at the financial broker and know where to go versus the bank. Often customers had no idea when they entered the branch where to go, where to queue, who to look for. So again, a competitive advantage there. Our recommendations on this particular area, and again, if you work with colleagues or you have a receptionist, I would encourage you, just observe how you are greeting customers. Keep in mind, if you were the customer, how would you like to be greeted? So again, just reviewing, making the customer feel welcome, giving a warm and friendly greeting. I particularly really like examples where staff actually come from behind a desk or come from behind a counter and actually greet a customer. It's not often done, but can be really powerful in creating that positive customer rapport. So introducing yourself and offering assistance, and if it's applicable, informing them of who they're going to be meeting. And if there's any delay at all, I would always err on the side of caution and apologise. Even if you think it's a pretty reasonable delay, just apologise for it. It can just set you back on a level playing field with the customer. And again, if there's going to be a wait, direct the customers to where to sit, and even a bonus if you can offer them tea and coffee. So moving on to the next part of where the consultation actually takes place. So the mystery shopper now is actually sitting down in front of the financial broker or the staff member in the bank to discuss their requirements. And as I'd mentioned, we've broken this down into the 4 areas: the introduction, exploring the customer needs, getting to know them, then using that information to match their needs, and finally closing the sale. So let's hear from our 3 mystery shoppers and get their thoughts and opinions as to who they felt handled this part better and why.
They were both very, very similar. The only main difference was that the financial institution showed me their terms of business and got me to sign them off from the start. But other than that, they were both nearly identical.
The initial introduction was fine at both ends. The payment member came out, shook hands and gave his name. He didn't give his surname, just his first name, and directed me to the office and let me through the door first. He was nice and very, very mannerly. The man in the bank was much the same, to be honest. He was very friendly and easy to get along with from the get-go. So I'd say the 2 introductions were very pleasant.
I have to say, neither of them set a context for the meeting. With the people member, it was very much a chat, telling me about the pension business and why it would be preferable to go with a people member like himself, as opposed to going to a bank or corporation and they took quotes from different entities, etc. He didn't actually specify, this is what we're going to happen in the meeting, and this is what we're going to talk about. He was very, very general and getting to know him as a person, as a pension advisor, as opposed to finding out about me and what I needed. With regards to the bank, then a similar situation. There was no structure. It was very much a pension advisor telling me about what pensions there were and whether it would be better for me to have a private pension, and then we went into some detail about it. He showed me the website and gave me the details so I could access it myself at home and see how the pension fund had been performing.
So in this section, the banks have tended to do a little bit better. And the main reasons for why they've done a little bit better in here is that they were better at setting the context and particularly outlining the introduction part, so how long it was going to take and what they were going to cover off during the discussion. So I probably would take into account the fact that a lot of the bank consultations tend to be IT driven. There's a lot of systems and they're probably working to a degree to a script. But the customers tended to take away that there was a bit more of a structure to the introduction. What they liked about it was that because it can be such a lengthy conversation, if you weren't aware of how long it was going to take, it felt much better to actually know in advance and have an expectation of roughly how long it's going to take and what you're going to cover. And finally, only half of the financial brokers actually gave the terms of business to their customers. The banks, there was about 73% in the banks gave the terms of business, whilst only 50% of the financial brokers. So again, it helps give a professional image of your business, and it really does help in building that trust with the customer. So moving on to exploring the customer needs. So this is all about getting to know the customer. What we asked the mystery shopper to measure here was how many questions, for instance, what type of questions they were going to ask and why they were going to ask them, and did they ask a sufficient number of questions, and how well they explored their broader financial needs, and then finally, did they take notes, did they come across as genuinely interested? So again, we'll hear from our 3 mystery shoppers.
Life insurance and see if any needs I had with regard to that. The questions they asked were far more detailed than the financial institution. The financial institution, however, probably did give a better, more impressive it was a setup. The questions with regard to risk were it was set out on the laptop. There was a screen there for me to look at, and the financial advisor went through each question with me in consultation with me. The PIBA member handed me a printout and asked me to fill in a survey. We then filled the survey in online together afterwards. The first set we got was completely irrelevant.
The staff member in the bank was better as he wrote a few things down for me. He seemed very curious about my situation and was curious to know what was going on with me, and he spent quite a bit of time. Whereas the people member, once he'd ascertained that I didn't have a whole load of information with me, he kept it very general. He seemed to be more anxious to set up another meeting. He wrote a few things down for his own personal information. He took my name, my address, and a brief outline of what my query was. But I think the other man went into a bit more detail.
The bank would have been stronger in the information gathering. The people member didn't really gather a huge amount of information apart from where I lived. There was no information gathering to a degree. The bank gathered somewhat more. They asked me about my business, about the turnover and so on.
So the key findings here, we can see that the financial brokers have performed better than the banks. And you heard from the mystery shoppers, they felt that the brokers tended to actually get them to know the customer better. And this was really across the board. The financial brokers who used a more conversational type methodology to get to know the customers tended to perform better than the bank, where it was just question after question or filling in a survey of questions. The bank slightly outperformed the financial brokers in explaining the reason for the questions, and the customers thought that the banks asked more questions in order to gain an understanding of their needs. But however, overall, as I said, the overriding result here was that the customers felt that the financial brokers, in essence, showed much more genuine interest in their business, and then that's what pulled the score up for the financial brokers. So from looking at those findings, firstly, you need to tell the customer why are you asking all of these questions. I think particularly when it comes to finance, it's very important that to relax the customer, give them a context for why you need to ask these questions. Questions should cover off, as you know, the four areas: the personal details, the current financial situation, their attitude to risk, and then any other financial needs. And then this is going to allow you to make the most suitable recommendation. However, more importantly, in order to demonstrate to your customer that you're genuinely interested, you should take notes, and your body language should be totally focused and listening to their answers. There was actually one mystery shop, for instance, that stood out in my mind, where the mystery shopper from the outset, as kind of part of the chit-chat at the start, had said that they had delayed this decision about pensions because they got stung badly in the past, and they really were demonstrating that they were very adverse to risk. But when it came to matching the needs, the financial broker actually very much focused on kind of medium to high risk products. So again, that had a negative impact on the customer satisfaction. They were like, well, this person wasn't listening to what I was saying. So very, very important to take the notes and listen before you make the recommendations. So then matching the needs, coming up with the suitable products. We asked the mystery shoppers if suitable products were outlined based on the level of information that had been given, and if the broker then or the staff member outlined features and benefits of each. So again, we'll have a quick listen to the
PAB member again. I was offered 4 more options at the end. The financial institution seemed to get one idea into his head, one fund, and then just went with that one fund. The PAB member went through a range of options, showed me a lot of funds, how to look at them myself, the benefits and the downfall of each different option. It was more personal. I really felt that the PAB member got to know me better than the financial institution.
No specific products were mentioned on either end. The bank staff member went through a couple of percentages with me in terms of some very obvious things, like the more that you put in, the more you would get out. But neither of them outlined any policy or directed me towards investigating anything specific at all.
There was no options discussed with the PAB member. No options discovered whatsoever, unfortunately. With the bank member, he suggested I could actually use some of the profits from the company and invest them in the pension. It would be a good way of getting money out of the company without having to pay a huge amount of tax. A very tax-efficient method of getting money out of the company.
So in this section, as I'd mentioned from the outset, the banks have actually outperformed the financial brokers here. And I think this tended to be because the banks were probably even more limited in the number of options that they could actually choose from versus the financial brokers. You have a large array of different products. But what's notable here is that I think customers actually preferred a limited number of options to consider. And the end result was that the bank tended to be more specific in their recommendation versus the financial broker. Explaining the features and benefits tended to be poor for both parties, both for the financial brokers and the banks. However, the financial brokers were actually somewhat better at it than the banks. And as you know, to sell any product or service, it's so important that the customer can identify with the benefit. And there's no difference in this when you're selling or communicating a financial product. You need to know what the benefit to you as a customer is. So in order to demonstrate to the customer why they should take this product from you, they need to have confidence in you and what you're communicating to them. So very simply, avoid any confusion, use very clear, simple language, outline what the benefits are to them, and explain why you're recommending these product or products to them. It should be tailored, it should be easy to understand, and this is ultimately going to portray a much more professional, and the customer will ultimately have more trust in what you're saying, that you have their best interests. So the final part of the customer journey is the close and follow-up. And what we asked the mystery shoppers to measure here was, were they actually asked if they'd like to go ahead with the product or proceed with the application? Explain what the next steps were if they wanted to proceed, or if they were given any support literature or summary points of what was discussed.
Definitely being a member, I felt the options that were given were far more tailored towards my needs. I was given a range of options, I was given a lot of information. It was dealt with in a way that I understood what I was being offered. The financial institution seemed to just offer one product, and that was it. That's all he was going with. I didn't feel that he has as clear an idea of what I needed. Whereas the PABA member, I really felt that they knew exactly what I was looking for and tailored the options I was given towards me.
When I was in the meeting with the man in the bank, he nailed down the next meeting there and then. He took out his diary and asked me could I come back into him before Christmas, and he confirmed the date and the time, took my number and arranged a follow-up, and also gave me his business card and his mobile number. Whereas the people member, we shook hands and he suggested I make a follow-up call rather than him chasing me. He has said to me, lovely to meet you, and if you'd like to discuss it further, give us a ring and arrange a second meeting. Whereas the other man actually arranged the second meeting before I got out of the office. I got a call from the bank. I didn't get a call from the staff member, but from his office to see if I was going to attend that meeting that he'd arranged for me, which I declined to do, but that would have been in early December. The people member did ring me back, but it was January.
I think I would if I was going for a pension in a real life situation with the company. I would probably go with the people member, simply because I think personality wise, I would be interested to hear what he's got to say. I know I warm to him on a personality basis. I certainly wouldn't discount the bank member, but I think the people member, I would go and hear what he's got to say about a pension for me.
So as I said, in this section, it was the lowest performing section across the board. And we come across it time and time again where you have great staff, great product knowledge, you give the customer all the information in the world, you tell them about the product, you outline the features and the benefits, and then they walk out the door without securing that follow-up or that commitment for the customer. And often the response that we get from staff is that, I don't want to do the hard sell, I don't feel comfortable with it. But in this case, it simply is just giving a customer a choice. So what do you think of that? Is that something you'd like to proceed with? Another key area of competitive advantage that really isn't being utilised here is the follow-up. And again, very poor across the board. Agreeing a follow-up with the customer should just be an automatic. It should be just done with the customer before they leave. And really, it would be advisable not to leave the control of that follow-up in the customers. It should be up to you to follow up with the customer. And very often, I think that kind of a reminder, either a couple of days later or whatever agreed time, can often be a very positive for the customer. Just the reminder can often help them with that decision-making process. So our top tips here, in terms of closing, is to briefly summarise what the conversation was, outline what the critical bits are, what does the customer have to do next. As I said, simply asking something like, would you like to go ahead with this? Is it something you're interested? Brilliant if they say yes, and if they say no, well, what are the barriers? What are your concerns? Don't leave the customer, walk out the door with that question mark in their head, because you can be sure if they're going to a competitor, that's the first thing that's in their mind that they're going to get an answer to from your competitors. I always think it's important that, and it works very well, if you can give the customer some sort of documentation, even if it's a summary of the notes that you've taken, giving them something tangible to walk out the door. And if there's absolutely nothing else you take away from today, I would just say the key here is the follow-up. It's a real competitive advantage here because There's nobody in the sectors that we mystery shop actually doing this very well, but it certainly is on the radar in the financial sector. You see a lot of the larger banks now where this is an automatic part of the scripting, the systems, IT systems are set up for it. It's not being done well, but it's certainly an area that I think that is going to become very common practice. So, to summarise, what the advantages that you have over the banks. Well, looking at everything that we have discussed, there are 3 key areas of advantage here. First of all, there's less communication barriers. You're much easier to do business with. You can contact the person you need much faster and start the initial business process. There's a much more personable, welcoming approach when you do business with you. And more importantly, above anything else, is that the customers generally felt more valued. They actually felt that you came across much more genuine than the experience they had within the banks. So finally, I believe there's a sample of this in the pack for you. But where can we improve? Where can we move on from now? So what I've done here is just to summarise the key actions. And what I'd encourage you to do is to review your current business and how you actually conduct each of these steps of the customer journey and reflect on where you can make improvements. And remember to view these from your customer's experience. So firstly, the telephone. Prepare the customer for what to expect and what to bring with them. When they arrive, introduce yourself. Confirm the customer's name. Make sure you expect your customer, appear organised. And if there's any delay, apologise. Then during the meeting, set the agenda for the meeting, briefly, how long it's going to take, what you plan on covering, explaining why you need to ask questions, and giving them the terms of business. Then getting to know your customers. We covered off the 4 areas where questions need to be asked. And I think you do this very well, but that conversational approach certainly seems to be having a strong correlation with a positive customer satisfaction. Listen to the responses and take notes. In terms of matching products, outlining the options, and again, try to be specific in the recommendations. It really does help in that customer's decision-making process if that can be simplified. And outlining the benefits goes a long way to that customer decision. And checking in with the customer if they understand what you've communicated. I think often if you find someone nodding their head, you just assume they actually understand. But do check in with them during the conversation. Do they have questions? Do they understand what you're saying? And finally, the close and the follow-up. So you're going to summarise the meeting, explain what the next steps for the customer are, and ask for the business. Like, as I said, what do you think? Is this something that you'd like to go ahead with? Give the customer documentation, and finally, you follow up. So as I said, if you have any questions, I would be delighted to take them, or alternatively, as I said, no problem if you'd like to discuss afterwards, or even contact our office if you have any questions. And if you'd like a copy of the presentation, I can make that available as well. Yeah, so if everyone, I don't know if everyone heard that, what the gentleman asked me was, when our mystery shoppers called either the financial broker or the bank, did they outline what they were actually calling for, or was it just that they wanted to make an appointment? So the answer to that is no. The mystery shopper called and gave the brief outline of what the scenario was. So they were specifically looking at their pension options. Exactly, yeah. There was a couple of cases where we came across that the financial broker nearly went through the full consultation there and then on the phone. And so again, I'd probably advise, hold back a little on the phone if you're going ahead with the meeting.
Hi. The second interview doesn't seem real.
Yeah,
I don't know, can you expand on it, what happened, or guy in his house, and the girl, she was extremely negative, you know, towards the broker, towards the financial broker, and also just looked like, what age was the broker? Where was he based? Was it, God knows. I mean, it just doesn't seem right.
This is where the mystery shopper went to someone's house.
Also spoke about the experience, no follow-up, no documentation, no expansion. Like, it sounds like either the guy was elderly or suffering from dementia or something. It doesn't seem right.
Yeah. Well, no, it happened. It
But
happened.
it sounds like an entrapment one, which we've seen on the TV before and stuff.
No, I forgot to mention at the very start the 15 financial brokers that were selected at random. These were picked as a broad cross-section across the country. And for every financial broker that was selected, we would have mystery shopped a corresponding bank in the same town. But no, they're absolutely real. The two audio files, they were actually telephone calls that we had conducted, but the audio wasn't great, so we actually transcribed, and that's why they may sound a little bit scripted, but that was genuinely the actual feedback from the mystery shopper. Thank you.